Hi, I'm Jonathan Crocker, and welcome to the Ren Faire History Podcast, presented to you by the digital Ren Faire. I'm here today with an interesting group of people here who all share history on the road, and I'll just go ahead and let each of them introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Caleb, the Daring Horseman, among other things.
What else have you done, Caleb? Tell us
Give me your full name.
My name is Caleb Carinci Asch. I am a horseman, done the knife throwing show with my dad, and done theater with my mother. We have traveled with the Renaissance fairs for 1,000,000 years, gone 1,000,000 places, and I don't know, Mom, go ahead. Take it away.
Brag about your son.
So I am the mother of that person. My name is Ciara. I started out on the road because I fell in love with Carl Asch, who you'll hear next. I began it as a character I called Semolina. She was a bag lady witch, a character on the streets, and she did love magic. And so finally the crowds got too big around me, so I took it to the table and I began doing tarot work. Again, working mostly with relationships and how people have trouble loving each other. And so I did that for quite a while, and then I guess I retired about 10 years ago because of a back injury that didn't let me sit. But it was an incredible experience raising a Caleb on the road and living a Ren Faire life.
Well, I'm Carl Asch, and I guess I'm the impetus for this, for these people having been forced to travel around the world. I am Giacomo the Jester. I'm known as Giacomo the Jester at Renaissance festivals and have been doing them for more than 30 years now. I do a show of magic and juggling, the Giacomo the Jester show. I do the knife throwing show. It's called the Ooops Comedy Knife Throwing Show. And then I have a band, Empty Hats, or if I'm at a festival that Empty Hats is not a part of, then I have a band called Tip the Velvet, of which
I play the drums on.
That's right. There you go. And have been very fortunate. Ciara and I raised Caleb on the road. When Ciara got pregnant years ago, I was terrified. Both of us were gypsies and traveling around the world, and we hadn't necessarily even made a commitment to one another yet, really. And so when we realized we were going to be parents, I was terrified and thought, oh my God, I'm going to have to get a attaché case and a 3-piece suit and get a job. A job, which it's hard to say without, wincing a little. And Ciara said, no, I don't want your father to be the father of this child. I want you to be the father of this child. And so we had to make this work with me being a jester and her being a tarot reader, and had to make it work. But I am forever grateful. I feel like I was able to live my life because of her encouragement in being who I am. And raising Caleb on the road was phenomenal. I think that this is just an incredible environment with which to raise a child.
At least in those days. My experience is that some of the evolution of the road is that we lost that fire, where every night you had a fire and everybody sat around the fire and the children played with each other and they danced, and there wasn't the technology.
Right, we didn't have the phones, and nobody had televisions, nobody had air conditioning.
Yeah, but it felt like you were raising your child with a community. And you always knew that there was someone there that was going to mind your child if you lost track. I'm not sure that there's that same center on the road these days.
We're a little more isolated in our trailers than we were. We had a 35-foot Greyhound bus that we named traveled around in, named Juggling.
Yeah, and in the course of a day, 10 people would come, 15 people would come.
Yeah,
we would make breakfasts and lunches, and there was always this strong sense of a communal life.
Right, and we could lay in bed and and Caleb could get up and go to Lloyd and Rosie's trailer, or go to go find Andrew, and
in the course of the day I would go to the glass blowers and to the forge, and and help Ray with the birds. And it was just kind of the normal day of going and checking in on everybody, and being a part of all that.
And there was so much. One of the things that's great about Renaissance fairs and for kids is that there's a falconer here. There's musicians here. There's glassblowers here. There's people that do leather. There's people, anything you could possibly want to learn. Right. Anything you could possibly want to learn, anything you could find a passion for, it's here. And because the adults basically only work 2 days a week,
there's time for everybody.
There's time. I got to spend more time with Caleb than most other fathers that I knew. So it was really perfect. I mean, it was a perfect environment.
Well, yeah, I mean, like essentially, you guys got to be stay-at-home parents because we lived where we worked 2 days a week.
Yeah. I always say I was in semi-retirement for 40 years. So, and it's been fabulous. And then to have him, Caleb went off at 15. He got a job in Orlando
at Arabian Nights.
At Arabian Nights, and then, but then came back and did some shows. Worked with Barely Balanced as an acrobat
for a hot minute.
For a hot minute, hot and contentious minute.
But it's not all sweetness and light out here.
This is show business, baby.
I think there's a few people out here have egos.
A few. Yeah. So, and then Caleb was a stage combatant and started performing at the age of 6 at the Pennsylvania show. You want to share that?
Yeah, please. Tell us about the arc that you went through.
Well, so I guess before that, I'd been tumbling, and I was, always really physical. And the first year that we did PA, I don't know where the idea came from for me to do the chess match, but you presented to me the idea, and I was not thrilled about it. I really wasn't thrilled about it. Like, I loved watching you on stage, and I loved watching Brune, and I loved watching Danny Lord. I used to go and watch everybody, but I could never really imagine myself up on stage. And then you said to me, "You only have to do it once, and if you don't like it, you never have to do it again." And now I have 9 horses, and I've performed on a couple of continents. And
yeah. And it was so wonderful that first chess match, because you were so terrified that day. And I was like, yeah, just do it once. We promised. Do it once. You never have to do it again. And then he got
first one's free.
The first one. Right. That first synapse rush is free. Next, now you're in trouble.
Now you're hooked.
And so then he did the thing, and he comes running off the chess match into my arms, and I go, "You don't ever have to do it again. It's okay." He was like, "Oh no, I'll do it tomorrow." Yeah, it was great.
For $5 a weekend.
Whoa!
Yeah, that's pretty good allowance for those days.
I bought a lot of G.I. Joes with that money after Pennsylvania, because back then it was 16 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So the other thing that I remember, even before this, I think maybe you were 4, okay? And we were at the Poconos Renaissance Festival. And so one day you had gone into a booth and seen these pewter figurines, and you really wanted them, and you had gone to Mom and said, "Mom, there are these great pewter figurines, blah, blah, blah." And she said, "No, they're $8 and they're crap." And so he immediately ran to me, Dad. And I said, no, because they're $8, they're crap, and your mom and I talk to one another. So then later in the day, he comes running over to me, and he goes, "Dad," he said, "this guy gave me a quarter for doing a cartwheel. He gave me a quarter." And then I saw it. I saw the leap between cartwheel, quarter, pewter figurine. Right. So it was like I literally saw it in Caleb's brain. It was fabulous to see. So he was like, how many quarters are there in $8? So he went out. Somebody gave him $1 for doing a flip, and so he marched in very, very, very proudly at the end of the day and bought those pewter figurines, and then 2 weeks later he learned another very valuable lesson. They were crap. So I figure he's still doing flips for a quarter.
Yeah, I am. But I ended up doing that. I did that for a lot of years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then I remember in Largo, I think they told me. I think I was maybe 10. But I was making some serious cash because I started getting good at organizing the crowd, gathering the crowd. And then I was like, okay, everybody that comes, now it's a quarter for everybody. And I started pulling in some serious change. And then the entertainment director came over to me and was like, you can't do this anymore. You're making too much money.
Taking out of your tax. We can't have that.
We can't have a third income in this family. But yeah, and Largo is where I did my first stunt show.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah.
You met Hulk Hogan?
Yep.
Uh-huh.
Couple times, yeah. Yeah, really nice guy.
So how old were you?
Gave me $20 for the flips because I cornered him. All right, stop.
Nice.
Flips for money.
And how old were you when you did your first show?
6.
Well, that was sort of street. But when you got on stage,
that was the chess match.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But
at 6,
when you went off on your own and created your own stage.
Well, I never really had a stage show. I went to Arabian Nights and learned the act that I'm doing now, the flipping on horses. But,
I see.
And
that's basically a dinner theater in Orlando.
That was a dinner theater in Orlando. Yeah. We had like 80 horses at the time there.
Wow.
And like 15 riders on any given night. And it was really great because we got to learn all the different kinds of disciplines with the horses and everything. And I remember my dad and I went and watched the show for the first time because Kent Shelton from the Han and Lees, you know Kent, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He knew the director from Arabian Nights. And I was squiring for the Han and Lees. And like it was great because like they would put my tumbling in the joust, and I had a bunch of stuff to do, sword fighting and things, which was really fun. But Kent came up to me and said, at the end of the season, he said, he's like, you can't be here. You have to go somewhere else. You have to go somewhere where you can like really foster the talent. Mm-hmm. And so he called Laura Mandy's at Arabian Nights and set up an interview for me, and my dad. Drove me from Tampa to
from Gulfport.
Yeah.
So we walked in. He walked out with a job.
Yeah.
She offered him, can he work on Monday? And I'm like, I don't know. I think I have to ask his mom. And so we're literally driving back home, and I call Ciara, and I go, I think we just lost our boss. Because we got him an apartment right across the street.
Mm-hmm. But you drove me back and forth for I think a month.
Yeah.
Every
you were
day.
how old at this point?
15.
15.
Yeah.
15,
Yeah.
so it felt like a big decision, but he was a road kid.
Yeah, and I was already, and I had already gone off with the jousters.
Gone to,
I was already living with the Lees.
Right.
Yeah, that lifestyle lets them develop.
Yeah.
So you spent a fair away from your folks with...
I started working for the Han and Lees when I was 13, and then, I did my first show away from you guys, I think, when I was 14.
Yeah, TRF, I think.
First it was, I think the first one was Tennessee.
Was the
Yeah.
With Andrew.
With Andrew, for Roy Cox, squiring. Yeah, and then Pittsburgh, with the Lees, and then TRF, and then that was kind of the last fair I did for a long time.
And
as your orbit spiraled out of the Renaissance festivals.
Into the circle.
Well, the planets, they always everybody's...
It's like a Venn diagram. There's some overlap.
Let's just follow that thread for a minute. So you worked with Arabian Nights for a number of years.
For 2 years.
2 years.
Yeah. And then what? And then I did Barely Balanced after that. I jousted a little bit. And then...
Cavalia.
And then I got the job on Cavalia when I was 19.
And Cavalia was a traveling horse
show.
show.
Yeah, it was like a Cirque du Soleil style, big $10 million show. and they hired me for that to do the bareback act, and then I ended up doing a rolling glow back there and the horses, and we went all over Europe, and like it was a wonderful. It was a really wonderful experience. It was just such a.
It was a beautiful show. I saw it in Arizona.
Oh, you did? Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
What a great show.
Amazing.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I was fortunate enough to be on that show for another 2 years, and we did like 14 cities in Europe and Canada and U.S. and that was really great. And then after that, what did I do after that?
Everything.
So you started working circus.
Then after that it was like really predominantly circus. Yeah, for the last like I guess 15 years it has been really just circus. I've done a few Renaissance fairs here and there, but then we started doing this one like 2 or 3 years ago, and this was like that's right, because I did this one right before I went to Big Apple.
Just for a couple of weekends,
like 2 weekends or something like that. Yeah, on my way to Big Apple.
This would be in Ohio, where we are right now.
Right, exactly. Thank you.
Context.
Right, people can't see us.
Look, it's Ohio. So it was so much fun. The first time we ever did the knife throwing show together was in Pennsylvania. Caleb was 18.
Yeah.
And we only did it as a lark. What was it? Don Juan and Miguel were leaving PA to do the North Carolina show. And so we just for the hell of it, went to whoever the entertainment director was that year, said, you know what, if you want, Caleb and I'll do the knife throwing show. We had never done it before, but he was raised hearing it. I started doing the knife throwing show when he was 4 years old, and so he was raised.
I hadn't killed anybody yet.
And when I first started learning how to throw knives and putting this throwing show together with Frank O'Gara, I was learning it, and Ciara's dad, Nick, came to me and said, listen, I know you're learning how to throw knives. You have to make me a promise. You will never throw knives around my grandson. So I said, oh yeah, never, because he was 4 years old. Right? We didn't look very far into the future, because then at 18 we did the knife throwing show together.
Yeah.
But I'm really not throwing knives around him.
Nope.
So he's throwing knives around me.
Yeah. So the promise has been kept.
The promise has been kept.
Good to hear.
So that was really fun, and then we did it a couple of years later in Largo. Or in Tampa.
No, we did. I think we did it twice in Pennsylvania. I did it first when I was 18, and then the year that I jousted there.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Then in Largo.
And then in Largo, yeah.
And then here.
Yeah.
It's been a gas.
Times, yeah.
It's been a gas.
Yeah. What a treat.
Yeah. Well, there is, for any of you out there, just so you know, there is nothing cooler than getting to perform with your son. Nothing is better than that. So, and it's effortless. It's it's so sweet. Yeah.
Any nerves on your part, Ciara, around all of that?
No, not really. There wasn't. No, it was more.
The writing act. The writing act is another issue.
That's totally different.
You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, about the anxiety of a mother. Because I had allowed him to whip spaghetti out of my mouth when he was 9. So I was used to a little insanity, but now he was doing backflips from one horse to another, and I knew he could die. So yeah, and
that's why she doesn't watch the show very often.
I don't. I still have it's still kind of hard to see it because it's a little scary. But, I mean, I have all the confidence in his abilities. I just...
Don't want to subject yourself.
But shit happens.
Yeah.
I remember years ago when he was doing Arabian Nights, his one of his two main mentors on the show, his name was Chaba. And he would do the hoop, the flaming hoop. And I'm watching it because I would go all the time and watch the show as Caleb was learning to do.
So this is jumping off the horse through a hoop and
then landing back on the horse. Yes. So Chaba is doing this trick, and I know that Caleb is learning this trick. All right. So I'm watching the show, and Chaba goes through the hoop, hits the hoop, which is on fire, and falls to the ground. And people take a blanket and throw it on him and pat him down. And after the show, I go, Caleb, is Jabba okay? Is Jabba all right? And he goes, Dad, it was a fake. Because then he got up on the horse and did it again. He said, Dad, it was a fake. And I went, whoa, good job. I got sucked in. And so Caleb continues to learn this trick. And then I go, okay, Caleb, there's two things you must absolutely do. One, if you're going to do a fake, you have to warn your mother and I that you are doing it. Okay? Yeah. That's number one. If we're in the audience, you must warn us that you're doing it. If your grandmother is in the audience, Ciara's mom, do not, under any circumstances, do the fake. Because she will either have a heart attack and die, or she will run into the arena and make sure you're okay. So if Rose is there, do not do the fake under any circumstances. So, yeah.
Yeah, but then I got that horrifying phone call from the emergency room, because he's only 16 years old, 17 years old. Hi, we have your son here, and he has a burn. But the fascinating thing was, okay, so he was okay. Once I got to that he was okay, it was fine. But he and I stayed on the phone the whole time. And again, he's a Rennie kid, so he was raised with homeopathy and naturopathy. So he's on the phone with me saying, Mom, you have to see the equipment in here.
Yeah. Medical science is amazing. It's amazing. They don't put anything under your tongue here.
Whoa, people with money have all this shit. That's great.
I'm just going to interject a little story from my history, because neither of my kids went into Renaissance Fair performing. They both had jobs at fairs, but they didn't go to the performing side. But when my daughter first saw my show, she was probably 3, 2.5, 3. And we have a bit in our Beowulf show where, you know, in the legend, the story of Beowulf, Beowulf defeats the monster Grendel by pulling his arm off. So we have a stick with a glove that's stuffed with batting in the mud, and I get pushed down into the mud next to the stick, and then my partner grabs one of my arms and the glove and pulls it up out of the mud. So I've got one arm and a stick, and he's flailing with these, and then the narration goes that you know, with the sound of splintering bone and tearing sinew, Beowulf pulls Grendel's arm off. Well, she watches me go down into the mud, and
Daddy's arm get
ripped off. And I just hadn't thought that far ahead. Nor had her mom, who was sitting there watching her daughter become terrorized by the fact that this new man in her life has this. Well, he's gone. I guess mom's going to be looking for somebody else.
When Frank and I first did the knife throwing show, Frank had, I guess, a 6-year-old daughter, Quincy, at that time. And so it was real. And I made sure she would come to the knife throwing show. And at the end of the knife throwing show, I throw a knife right into his chest. And so I
quote unquote,
hopefully,
so far,
unless he forgets the knife.
Unless he forgets, that's another one.
So anyway, I had to make sure, Frank, please tell Quincy that either don't let her see that part, or, you know, make sure she knows that this isn't. I'm not really killing you. You know, just
So doing that spot, because that's my spot in the show now, and so doing that spot, you have to make sure to keep a knife inside, like a butter knife inside of your boot, so that you can unlatch the trap door to get out. And
now you're telling
how it's done. Anybody with half a brain, you use the knife to unlatch the door, and you go out and replace it with the dummy, sneak around the audience, and surprise everyone. Unless you forget that
my career is over.
Unless,
this will be a pay-per-view part. We'll put it behind a fire paywall.
Unless you forget the knife.
Unless you forget
the knife. And so I forgot the knife, and I'm in the bag, and I think to myself, I can't tell him. That's it. I'm just gonna fucking die here. That's it.
I'll just let him
kill me. And then I panicked. Because I couldn't tell you, but I didn't want to die. So I started slamming my ass up against the door until the latch broke and I fell out onto my back. And then jumped up and grabbed the dummy and threw it in there.
Just in the nick of time. Very funny.
I'm glad it's funny. I'm so glad that's a funny story.
Comedy, tragedy,
Tragedy,
fine line.
Fine line.
Fine line. If it's
Two sides
it's not
of the same
happening
locked
to
door.
you, it's funny.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the traveling side of it, because you guys had a highway bus that was converted for your home, and I remember those days because there weren't a lot of people with RVs on the road. A lot of people were living in tents or out of vans and things. So you alluded to this a little earlier that whoever had the largest space became the social hub of the community. And also then you had a large aging vehicle to get from place to place. Any stories come out of either of those aspects of having a big old bus on the road?
Oh my God! One time, you weren't there. This, but we were towing a small car. We're in Orlando on I-4, and it's you and Alex. Caleb. We had tutors for Caleb on the road. So as part of his schooling, so. Alex was one of these tutors, and we're going over an overpass. And if you know anything about Florida, overpasses are the highest elevated points in Florida. So we're going up this overpass, and all of a sudden this giant noise happens in the back of the vehicle. And I'm like, whoa, what is that? And all I could think of was something happened with the towed car. So I pull over, I put on the emergency brake, I put the bus in first gear, and I get up to go investigate, and it starts rolling backwards.
Oh. Yeah.
So I jumped very quickly back into, and put my foot on the brake, and that kept it, and then I couldn't take my foot off the brake. I didn't know what the hell to do. I was terrified because the thought of this 35-foot bus plus this potentially jackknifed car rolling into I-4 traffic in Orlando.
Freight train on fire.
Right, we could just, kill thousands of people. So I was terrified. And it turned out the drive train had disengaged and destroyed, when it did, rotating at thousands of RPMs a second, and it just destroyed everything. It destroyed the
air
bellows, the air bellows, the emergency brakes, just destroyed everything. And I was terrified, it had an air brake system. So I was really terrified that once the air thing, the brake wouldn't work, and oh my God! So Caleb and Alex went and
fled. Fled. Because I remember that vividly. I remember opening the door and jumping out of the bus.
Right.
I leapt onto the guardrail. As soon as I felt it start going backwards, I was like, "Abandon ship!"
Dad, you're on your own. Bye-bye. It's been nice.
It's been nice. I like this house. Bye. But that's right. We went and chocked the wheels.
Chocked the wheels, thankfully, and had to be, the bus had to be put on a flatbed.
Yeah.
There's nothing weirder than seeing a 35-foot your house on a flatbed tow truck, and the car and the tow dolly we literally needed 3 flatbed trailers, one for the car, one for the bus, and one for the tow dolly. So it was a mess, and I remember in those days the rule was you do not leave town unless there's $500 in the glove compartment to fix something. It didn't cover it.
Wasn't quite cover it.
It's not enough. So that was one time, but it was such a great vehicle.
It was a great space.
Great space, and now. Caleb travels around with, and I don't know if this story is appropriate for this, so if you want to cut this out, I get it, but Caleb now travels in a semi-truck and trailer with 9 horses, and his family has a son now, and stuff. And how big is your truck, semi-truck and trailer?
It's like 63 foot total, 18 wheels, 63
Okay.
feet. Yeah.
And I remember the first time I saw this rig was at Luann's.
Yeah.
And drove down from Gulfport, and I'm seeing this enormous semi-truck and trailer. And I'm going, okay, so let me get this straight. You were raised in a 35-foot bus. Now you have this. Is this your way of telling the entire world I have a bigger dick than my dad? And he said, oh, absolutely.
If you thought it, then yes.
If that's the way you're going to interpret things.
If that's the interpretation, then absolutely.
Yeah. And, you know, Caleb also went, we did a trip to Germany when he was 14, and bicycled around Germany in the Neckar Valley, and as part of his homeschooling, because he was studying German at the time, so we did a field trip.
Yeah.
You know.
A lovely field trip.
Yeah, that was great. That was pretty fabulous.
Did you perform along the way as well, or was it just...
No, because we were going to bicycle.
But we met a lot of really cool performers.
Yeah, we met this guy named Shiva.
Yeah, Shiva.
Who was such a delightful guy. He was a street performer in Heidelberg. Mm-hmm. And he did this thing. I always wanted to steal this bit. This bit was so cute. He would make his ring with a rope that he was going to perform in, and he'd set up, and he'd start gathering a crowd, and he'd get a little crowd, and then he would pull out an umbrella and get a water bottle that had holes around the edge of the water bottle, and then he would stick the water bottle on the center of the umbrella, the little nipple that comes up there, stick it on that, and then he would walk around and water would be dripping on the umbrella, and he would go, it always starts to rain when I'm about to do a show. It was just,
I hope you all stick around.
I hope you wait till it was just adorable. It was just the cutest thing. Yeah. Now, if I ever do it, you'll know I stole it. Damn these interviews.
All these secrets are coming out.
Shiva, thank you.
Yes.
Or Dankeschön.
Yeah.
Anything come to your logistical fun time?
Best times, worst times on the road.
Best times, worst times. No, I loved it. We finally, I'm a plant person, so I started, having one plant and then 2 plants, and then eventually
It was a bus full of plants.
There was a bus full of plants, and it became ridiculous. So I decided that I needed somewhere to throw plants in the ground. So that was this little town called Gulfport. We bought a house. And at the time, Carl said, your house, my bus. But then we decided, our bus, our house.
Yeah.
And so it's still there 25 years later. And so we had a couple of months there a year. But life on the road was just too compelling. So,
Yeah, it definitely was.
It was, yeah. And now here I am all these years later back on the road. And it's great because I'm a grandma back on the road, which is really fun. But yeah. Yeah,
And,
but after that Germany trip, I took Caleb and I went to Germany for his interview.
When I was at Arabian Nights, that was really fun.
Yeah, he was, what were you, 16?
Yeah, 16, I think, yeah.
And he had his heart set on...
going to Germany.
What was the name of that? Roncalli?
Roncalli, yeah.
Who fast forward 15 years, gave him a contract a couple of years ago, pre-COVID, and then rescinded it because they decided they couldn't have animals anymore.
Yeah.
Even PETA is getting to Europe.
Yeah.
But it was wonderful that it had come, this full circle. This little teenager who was just full of all this life and confidence, and then they called him all those years later. Man, pretty cool.
The ones that get away.
Yeah. And that was while I got that news, and I started the negotiation and then got the news when we were on The Greatest Showman.
Yeah.
Yeah, he worked with Hugh Jackman on The Greatest Showman.
Let's talk about that a little bit.
Who was a very cool guy.
Yeah.
He's very cool, but he's way taller than you would think.
Oh, yeah.
He's like huge Jackman. Yeah, but really nice guy, and that was a really fun experience. We were on set for like 5 weeks with the horses and getting to see backstage.
So what was your role?
I supplied 4 horses and a bunch of people, and we were supposed to shoot the opening sequence and the finale sequence, and we ended up basically shooting nothing, and they used our likeness and the likeness of the horses and turned it all into CGI so that they could get the horses to do exactly what they wanted. And, yeah. So we were kind of just living models that just lived there on set. And so we were basically a glorified petting zoo, because everybody would come into the barn. And so, we got to meet Robert De Niro, because Robert De Niro was there visiting set, and then was like, oh, what's this tent over here? And then comes in with his phone and FaceTimes with his kids with the horses, and then I met him I met him again on
the Big Apple Circus.
Big Apple when he patted me on the shoulder, and I turned around and it was him.
Mm-hmm.
And
did he recognize you from then? Or?
No, he didn't recognize. No. I can't imagine he did. But he patted me on the shoulder and he said, "Nice act, kid." I was like, oh, okay,
I'll take that one.
I'll take it. Yeah. But
yeah, the Big Apple Circus was incredible because all of these New York celebrities would come to the show all the time.
And having a solo act on Big Apple was, I think, a really it was a really big thing for me. That was a great time.
Yeah. A big worm in the Big Apple.
Yeah. Well, and letting my horses shit inside of the Gaudi Amphitheater was not Gaudi. What's the name of that band shell?
Oh, I don't know.
Guggenheim. That's the
Guggenheim.
one. Yeah, the Guggenheim band shell. But yeah, the horses were shitting inside of the Guggenheim band shell because that's where they set our stalls up. And so it was it was just marvelous. Yeah.
Of course, you broke Lincoln Center.
Oh, of course, I did break Lincoln Center with a semi on my. Yeah. We were doing the load end for the circus, and it's a really tight fit. I don't know if have you ever seen that.
I haven't seen the loading docks. No,
but have you been to Big Apple before?
I saw it in Boston.
Oh, in Boston. Okay, cool. Well, so they take that and they put it inside of Lincoln Center, which is the size of this table. They have an entire special unit to set the tent up.
And the tent is inside Lincoln Center.
Inside of Demrosh Park. Which is it's the park attached to Lincoln Center.
I see.
So it's really tight to load everything in there to put a 2,200 seat house inside of the tent and everything is really tough. And so I was one of the guys driving the semis in and out, and the very last semi on the very last day, I took a turn a little bit too wide, and the back end of the trailer clipped the entrance of Lincoln Center, and I broke $15,000 worth of imported Italian marble. Yeah.
But we have a memento.
We have a memento.
You have to keep some of the marble.
Yeah, the general manager walked
they paid
out.
for it.
Yeah. The general manager walked out, and she was like, "Well, I guess this happens every year, so I'm going to take this piece and put it on my desk next to the other 3 from the previous 3 years."
I think they would just take those corners and make them out of something but marble.
Right. Or,
Yeah.
You could just carve the corner off the building and just make it easier for the semi.
Yeah.
Right, I know. We had 8 inches on each side of the semi to get in, and it was a 90-degree... it was a 90-degree backup to get into Lincoln Center with 8 inches on either side. That was tough.
Yeah. Urban planning.
Yeah.
So, I'm going to ask a question, if that's okay. Where do you see your next 10 years? Either Renaissance fairs or circus or movies or...
I would like to do a combination of all those things. I don't know, 10-year plan. I'd like to still be performing. That would be great.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're going to South America next year, I think, and hopefully off to Europe after that for a little while.
And taking all the horses, or just it's a couple of the horses?
Taking three of the horses, and hopefully we'll go and compete in Monaco. It's the biggest circus festival. It's like the Oscars of the circus. We get to compete, and then you win a giant golden statue if you win. It's like a 40-pound gold statue or something, given to you by the Prince of Monaco.
Sounds pretty exciting.
Yeah.
Well,
So
good
try
luck.
to get there.
Yeah. Break a leg, I mean.
Hopefully not before. Hopefully during.
Well, what got you started doing Renaissance festivals?
I'm sorry?
Well, how did you get a start doing festivals?
I fell in love with Carl. So I was doing theater.
You were doing theater.
Yeah,
so
mine is
talk
theater.
a little bit about that.
Well, that was my history. I started doing theater when I was 10, writing plays and performing them. So I met Carl, I guess, it was like my 20s. And
At the Tuxedo.
I had never
Fair.
been to a Renaissance fair before. And I was interested in the street work. I was interested in the characters, and because my world was strict theater. Although we were doing experimental at the time, but it was different. So anyway, here comes this beautiful man and this Jester who just completely seduced me, and I mean, so much so that my car, they towed my car away. Yeah, because we just wound up hanging out for days on end. He had an old school bus, which I thought was absolutely charming. And so at the time, I was involved in theater, but the Renaissance Fair was so appealing. And I loved that idea of just this ad lib everywhere. So Carl invited me somewhere in the world, and I went. Florida. You were doing
Right. Epcot.
He was doing Epcot at the time, so I joined him down there. I wound up working and creating a free theater in Orlando, and then it was just natural to get on the road. And so then it was, what do I do on the road? And as much as I was more a director by trade, I had done a lot of acting, so I created this character. Semolina, she was this little bag lady witch who was on the run, and it was a lot of fun. And that's really how I started it.
One of the things that she did at the Marathon Festival in the Keys.
Oh, I remember this. Yeah,
It was the 500th anniversary of Christopher Columbus. Right? So we were asked, I was asked to be Cristoforo Colombo. So I walked around as Cristoforo Colombo, and Ciara was my mother. And it was hysterical.
So much fun.
It was so much fun. Because I would be hitting on these women going, I couldn't name a ship after you. I think the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Jennifer has a great ring to it. And then she would come up and go, he can't find his way from the privy in the middle of the night. What? So it was very funny.
Fun.
That was really fun.
Yeah, we did a lot of performing there, that's true. I forgot about the Marathon show. I played a princess for a while. And
you played the Queen one year, didn't you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, different things down there, but by nature, I'm much more of a listener than a speaker. So I eventually took that love magic thing where I was trying to help people remember what made them want to come together in the first place in their marriages, and I brought it to the table because I had done my schooling in psychology, and I had done this thesis work on Carl Jung and the tarot. So I was fascinated by the tarot and the imagery, and so that's what I did. I just started a tarot booth, and I loved it, and I fell in love with everybody who came to my table. It was just such a wonderful way for me to be able to connect really deeply with people. So I did that. I left the Semolina character behind, and it was wonderful. And then we bought that little house in Gulfport, and so I started doing theater on the streets.
Yeah, which turned into Theater Walk, and then
it was a lot of fun. And I got to actually direct my son. He was 9, 10, 11 in those areas. and I would do these little 10-minute plays. And so it was just really, again, just one more avenue. Because Carl and I would write songs together. And so we had that creative expression. And then, directing with Caleb. And then trying to direct Carl. Couldn't keep the fourth wall up.
Right. Right. Say something in we did God.
Yeah.
Woody Allen's God. And I couldn't not look at the audience. Carl, go look at the audience. Carl, go look at the audience. What? It was funny. I'm sharing. What? I don't know how to do this. What? It was very funny.
It really was. But we raised Caleb without a television, without any of those influences. So as a result, our lives were really pretty creative. You're working on songs, you're working on skills, you're working on plays, you're just always imagining and moving forward in your creative life that way. And so it was really a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I mean, there were a lot of late nights where Carl and I would be arguing over 2 words that I wrote in a song.
Right. We still have this one argument on this one song. She wrote this phenomenal song, Just a Tinker. And she wrote it, and it's gorgeous. The lyrics are beautiful. And she, gives me the lyrics, and I'm going, no, that ending does not work. The ending doesn't work. You have to change the ending. And we still, no, it should have been the other way. Yeah.
Such is art.
Such is art, right.
Art and family.
And then you weren't always doing the same festivals, though. Is that true?
Yeah, we started doing different festivals when Caleb was about 5.
Yeah, like 5 or 6 is when we had our...
Yeah,
our route was solidified kind of at 6.
Yeah.
Once you stopped doing Carver. Or no, I guess once I stopped going to Carver. Yeah.
So that was interesting for us as a family. Caleb would be with Carl, then Caleb would be with me. And for me, the first couple of years of that were really difficult because, as a mother, you get so focused on that's what I am. And so those first months of not being with my child were really challenging. But over time, we developed this wonderful little
nice rhythm. It was really great because I would live in a tent. The rule was whoever had the kid had the bus.
Yeah.
So we had this bus. So we would.
So it was always great for me.
Always had a roof.
So we would sit at certain points. We would sit around a table and do logistic meetings.
Right.
So Caleb was the salt shaker, and Ciara was the pepper shaker, and I was the ketchup bottle, and the bus was this. Oh, the bus was this, and the car was that, and we'd have to figure out. Well, the bus is going to Ohio, and then the car will be. So we worked it out that during Sterling. Ciara and Caleb in the bus were at the Northern Ohio show, and I was at Sterling in a tent. And then during Pennsylvania, Caleb and I would go, and the bus would go to Pennsylvania, and Ciara got an apartment in Ostounding on the Cape. And then we would reconvene, all 3 of us. There's still 3. Okay, all 3 of us. In Gulfport in November, when all those fairs were done, and it was really, and then we were a family, and then we would, so it was really.
And Gulfport was really fun because Rennie's, of course, anybody who had a house in those days, so the whole family would
First you had a bus, then you had a house. I mean, you guys were very popular.
We were really popular.
We were very popular.
At one point, it was so much fun, though. At one point, Shannon and Dana were doing that show, the Banging Nunny Nunnies.
Yeah.
They were doing the Florida shows. So we built this elaborate little city in my back garden where they had their tent, and it was just always somebody new, somebody different.
Yeah.
And there are apartments on the property, so Jim Hancock would come and stay and use it as his studio for recording.
Right.
And it was those
it was
days
really
were,
lovely. Really lovely. And then
Duncan
people
Joel
started
would come
moving.
everybody.
And then Linda Katie bought a house there, and Peter Suarez bought a house there,
and Misty,
and then
Victoria's there. We all sort of
so Gulfport became like this
our little
Rennie haven.
Yeah.
It was just
And
really
it's nice.
great.
Still now, when we leave home and the house is empty, the doors are open and people go and stay in there, and I don't kind of care who it is, as long as the house is living. And that's always how it's been on the road too.
Yeah.
And not so many challenges. Like when you're talking about, what would be the downside? To me, the downside was when you'd get 4 rain days in a row, and you had 2. We're not including Andrew in a lot of these discussions, but Andrew was part of our lives. And you have 2 8-year-old boys in the bus for 3 days, and I want to kill myself. That kind of stuff. Or it's raining, and Carl needs to rehearse, and there's a penny whistle.
The penny whistle inside of
God.
That's not pretty.
With all the windows closed.
Yeah.
The squeeze.
God,
Could have been a bagpiper.
Yes, right. So
I long for a bagpipe.
Right.
Yeah.
The dark days of the road. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, in general, it felt always that the community wanted to grow itself. I remember we had someone, a neighbor, who beat up his girlfriend, and he really beat her up. And the women found out about it and told the men, and Carl, and I don't remember who else.
Lloyd, I think,
Lloyd,
in Colorado.
Yeah. And they went to the man and said, no, this is not acceptable in our world. And they dealt with it. So it always felt like sort of we lived in this taboo-driven society rather than this law-driven society,
right,
where things were just not permitted or things were really encouraged. And yeah, I loved that about it. It truly felt like we wanted to mature as a group. We wanted to, keep going forward. Yeah, that was the good side.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. One of my favorite memories of Caleb growing up at Renaissance fairs, we would, because we were traveling around, sometimes he wouldn't see his friends for a whole year, and then they would just come back, and it would be great. And we were at the Sarasota Medieval Fair when it was at the Ringling Grounds.
My favorite.
Still. Yeah, it was a great
Gorgeous.
show.
I loved it there.
And Caleb, I'm thinking Caleb was 11 at this time, and he hadn't seen Andrew for a number of months, maybe 6, 7 months, and another friend, Kurt, who was Mary Lee's son and lived with Ross Papa and stuff like that. So they were just this inseparable trio when they were at the same fair, and they hadn't seen one another in 9 months maybe. And so Caleb was 11, but Kurt was 13 and Andrew was 13.
Yeah.
So they had gone through their growth spurt and Caleb hadn't. So Caleb is so short by comparison. Andrew, who is 8 feet tall anyway, so he shot up like crazy, as did Kurt, and then there's Caleb, 11 years old, and he didn't have his own. But he was still the leader of the 3 of them. So it was like, okay, let's go here now, guys. Oh, okay. And then you see the 3 of them, and it was so funny. It was so adorable. Yeah, it was really great. And Caleb and Andrew during PA, they would write songs to get food,
to get free food
of the day.
And they would sing for free food.
Sing for in front of a booth, and as an advertisement for the booth, they would sing about this pork pocket.
The steak on a stick. And, Joust desserts.
Do you have any top 10 favorites?
Let's see what Andrew remembers.
Yeah, he has the memory.
He has the memory for the music. Yeah.
Oh. But that's great.
I guess we did a rendition of "Taking Care of Business," but it was for somebody's booth. It was a little bit frowned upon because at the time it wasn't anachronisms weren't really tolerated.
Right.
But we got away with it because you were cute. We were pretty cute about it.
Very cute.
Yeah. Yeah. PA was a really great show for Andrew and I growing up. And it was nice to be in one place. That was back when I was 16 weeks or whatever. So we always had a really good chunk of time there.
Sure. And it was fun because Caleb didn't so much want to do schoolwork. But Andrew
really did.
He really did. So he would come on the bus, and I knew that if I taught Andrew would teach Caleb. So it worked out great, So
I had to learn math on a trampoline,
right?
Because I just couldn't.
And German, I would quiz him German vocabulary while he's jumping on a trampoline behind the end game stage.
Yeah, when Xavier was back there.
Yeah.
Xavier's trampoline.
And there was one word. just couldn't remember Zeigen, which means to show in German. So the movie, what was the movie? Tom Cruise, Jerry Maguire had just come out. And there's Cuba Gooding Jr., who in the movie goes, "Show me the money! Show me the money!" was a big tagline from that movie. Right, so I'd be like, "Zeigen Sie mir das Geld!" Yeah. Show me the money. So that was how we learned that word. Yeah. Yeah, it was great. Yeah, really, really fabulous.
Yeah, it was really the right choice to not send me to school. I would not have done well there.
Oh my God.
No, we figured out early on that you were just a
I mean, you guys gave me the choice, and I happily declined. Yeah, I couldn't.
You actually used to perform at the
schools,
schools,
yeah.
when we would go to golf.
Well,
it was your thing.
Oh my God,
he was
right. Caramore.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
So I was part of a troupe called I Giullari di Piazza. It's an Italian troupe, and we would go to this mansion in upstate New York and do kids' days. They would bus kids to this mansion, and it was I Giullari di Piazza would do a show, then Ray Pena would do Falcons, and then they did a museum tour of the house, and it was medieval Renaissance days in Caramore. And one day, Ray says to Caleb, "Why don't you be the runner for the lure for the Falcons?"
Well, yeah, because I was apprenticing for him.
Yeah. So he goes, and you're like, I'm thinking 7 at that time, 7 or 8, maybe younger. And he's running with the lure, and the lure got wrapped around his foot, and the eagle went, bam, talons into his foot. So I wasn't there. I was doing my show, and then at the end of the show, Ray is like, just so you know, I just want you to know we had a little thing. We had an incident. It's okay. He's all good now, But he was really good. Was really brave. He didn't. And Ray had to actually pry the talons.
The Harris Hawk talons.
Yeah. And that was when he decided you were 6, and he decided that that hawk was his spirit animal.
Right.
That's
what Ray told them the whole time. That's right.
Put a positive spin on it.
Yeah. The kid was totally traumatized. Yeah.
One of my other favorite memories of doing shows on the road with Caleb was we were doing the Marathon Festival, and it was on the beach, Sombrero Beach, and it was a great show, and Caleb and Jim Green's kids and were in the middle of the day. They went fishing.
Yeah.
They went fishing. Andrew.
Yeah.
Okay. So they went fishing, and I'm in the middle of doing my Giacomo the Jester show. Now, Caleb knew you do not interrupt Dad in the middle of a show. He was really good. And I don't know how old you were then. Again, maybe 6.
7, yeah.
So he did not interrupt me, but he's standing in the back of my audience holding up this enormous fish. It was so adorable.
A sheep's head, yeah.
A sheep's head. And so he didn't interrupt my show. Yeah. Nobody knew he was back there except me, and I'm trying not to laugh in the middle of my show, juggling. And he's going, look. It was great. And then he walked it over to Piggy,
Porky.
Porky, who had a food booth, and Caleb cleaned it and skinned it and filleted it
and then fried it.
Right there and then, So it was great, And again, these experiences, Caleb was 6 when he first learned how to crack a 9-foot whip. And,
And that went into the pre-show.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
So there's nothing a kid can't just walk around the fair and go, I want to learn how to do that. Well,
yeah, because in the course of the, in all my childhood, I've worked in so many different food booths and jewelry booths and in the blacksmiths and selling glass for the glass blowers, and everywhere we would go, I would try to try to apprentice for somebody different. And you just get to do everything, get anything that you want to do, and there's so many options.
one time at the Fort Lauderdale Festival when it was at Snyder Park. And we're on the bus. I'm done. Day is over. I'm alone in the bus, changing, getting out of my costume. So this guy that I don't know knocks on the door, and he goes, is Caleb around? And I think you're, again, 6, 7, 8, whatever it is. And I go, no, what, can I help you with something? And he goes, I wanted to give him this. And it was a knife. It was a dagger. And I'm like, excuse me? Why do you want to give my 8-year-old son a knife? Beautiful knife. And he said, well, he came by my shop, my sword and knife shop, and he just started demonstrating swords and doing all of these phenomenal moves with my swords and knives and doing flips and stuff like that. And I sold a ton of them. So I thought I would make a present and give him one of those knives. And I'm going, well, thank you. So that's how weird our lives were. And this was more than free-range child rearing, over space and time. Yeah. I got a little wrap-uppy thing. You got a wrap-uppy thing? You got a wrap-uppy thing?
I gotta go get hay.
So we're wrapping it up. All right, well, the only thing I'll say in wrapping it up is that what we haven't yet mentioned is that Caleb now has a son named Dante.
Yes.
And so, who knows, maybe a third generation of Renaissance. If I'm around long enough, maybe he'll do the knife throwing show with me. Maybe he'll play music. Who knows? It's just multi-generational, and he's a really, really sweet kid. And
he's a good sense of humor already.
Yeah.
And he refuses to sit down on the horses. He will only stand on them.
Really? Yeah. That's perfect.
That's how it's done, right?
That's how it's done. I told him, I said, everybody sits down on horses. It's okay. You just stand on them like Daddy. Yeah.
Can you sit?
Horses are not for sitting.
That's enough. It hurts them. So, it has been a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful life.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you so much for joining us for this episode of the Ren Faire History Podcast. I've been joined today by Caleb Carinci Asch and Ciara Carinci and Carl Asch, a family unit the way we do it at the Renaissance fairs. And it's been great hearing stories and sharing reflections on your time raising a son on the road, and being a son being raised on the road, and being a family unit, and being performers, and all the other little tidbits that come with Renaissance festivals. Being at Renaissance festivals, big chunks of a lifetime.
I only got weepy 2 or 3 times during this, so it was really, really lovely. Thanks for having us.
So I'm Jonathan Crocker. You can find me performing at the Ohio Renaissance Festival with the Theater of the Ground Mug shows, and at the Arizona Renaissance Festival as part of the Wild Man show. And we have Facebook pages reflecting both of those performances, and you can find me also at moremud.com or wildman.com.
Carl Asch, Empty Hats is the name of my Irish and Celtic band, so you can emptyhats.com or Empty Hats on Facebook as well. I also do tours to Italy, so you can find that information on that at renadventures.com with Paolo Garbanzo and the like. So Sicily, Tuscany, Greece. So yeah, come join us.
Sounds fun.
Ciao.